And most people are just not that sophisticated when it comes to these things.
Oh.
If they're betting online, they're just doing it for fun. They think they can win. They want to bet their team.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make the game more exciting. And so those people are basically, they're very under-researched. They don't have like the full grasp of understanding of the complexities of sports gambling. Because it's a lot more complex than I ever thought. When I was going over your stuff, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, this involves so much time and this is not a simple thing as like, oh, I follow sports. I think Kansas City's going to win. It's not. It's complicated. Very, very complicated. And to win at a level that you won at over your career and the numbers, like, what is the biggest bet you ever placed?
I bet $4.5 million on New Orleans to beat the Indianapolis Colts in the Super Bowl. That's the biggest bet I ever placed.
Did you win?
I did. I won it. I got lucky and I won it.
You got lucky on that one?
Well, yeah. I mean, anytime you win, I mean, I feel like I'm lucky. I mean, Joe, the world's made up of a lot of different kind of people, as we both know. And but no, I feel like anytime I win a bet, I got lucky. And the reason I had such a big bet is what I do, Joe, is I make a line on the game myself. My prediction of what I feel like the differential should be.
Independent of what the experts
Completely
say.
independent. I don't even look at their line when I make my line.
Really?
No.
That's high level shit.
Well, that's all I'm doing the same thing they're doing.
Right.
I mean, believe me, the principles that I'm following and making my line are the same principles that the handicapper is making. But it's Joe, it's kind of like baking a cake, you know. One guy might put a little bit more flour in than the other guy does. And so that's how we end up with different, lines, different numbers. So I make a line on each and every outcome of the sports that I'm involved with.
And you betting this on the individual players, their overall career, what age they are, how they've been playing this season, who the coach is, all the different factors, whether or not there's in-player disputes in between players. Like, there's a lot of things to take into consideration.
Some more important than others, but there's a lot of factors. The larger the differential between the number they make and my opinion, the larger bet I make. There has to be a minimum of a certain amount of separation or I won't make a bet. So I'll just give you a rough example. Let's say the NFL. And let's say I would have to have a minimum of, say, a 1.5 differential from the line they make from the line I make. 1.5, 2 points. Well, I would bet 1 unit. That would be the smallest bet I would make. But for each half point, if I made the line on the game 6 and they had it 8, I would bet 1 unit. If they made it 8.5, I would bet 2 units. If they made it 9, I would bet 3 units. If they made it 9.5, I would bet 4 units. If they made it 10, I would bet 5 units. Well, the New Orleans game you asked me about, which I couldn't believe, was a Super Bowl game. And this type of year, we never get this kind of differential. But I had like a 7-point differential between the line I made and the line they made.
Really?
They made Indianapolis 7, and I thought the game should be pick'em. And when I saw the line, I couldn't believe it. I went back. I said, well, maybe I haven't made a mistake here. I went back, redid it, no, pick them. So that's how I ended up with such a large bet.
When you go through something like that, how much time are we talking? Like, if you're placing a $4 million bet on a Super Bowl game, how much time are you researching?
But that time of the year, I mean, all of our research is done. I mean, it's this last game here. Okay, the only changes you're going to make from the last games that these two teams played during the Super Bowl is, okay, are there any players injured which you have to account for? And clearly, if they're playing on a different surface or something maybe than the teams normally do, it's very small. I mean, the second the game's over, we can have the line on the next game within 6 hours. It's not a problem or less. I mean, unless it involves, some injury or something that, it may take us until we get some more clarity on that. But as soon as the game's over, almost within an hour or two.
Now, there's been some times over the years where referees, specifically in basketball games, have been caught doing things, calling penalties, trying to swing the game in favor of another team, and they get caught for it and busted. How much do you think that goes on today? Like, how much do you think, like, referees are bought off or maybe perhaps they're betting themselves?
I don't think that exists at all, Joe.
Really?
And if it does, it's very, very small.
But it has been, right?
Things have happened in the past, but you know who uncovered each and every one of those? gamblers. People betting sports and bookmakers, they're the ones that made law enforcement aware of these things. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a casino or whether you're a bettor, the integrity of sports is the most important thing in the world to you. A good thing about what's going on today, there's probably more transparency in betting today than there ever has been. All of the legalized gambling that's taking place, they have everyone's account information. They know everything you're doing. And the other thing about betting on sports, Joe, unlike, say, Wall Street, it is a small market, much, much smaller market than Wall Street. So if you go out and you make a sizable bet in sports, the line's going to move, and it's impossible to hide it, okay? Now, there's people such as myself, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people in the sports business. If they see a line on a game move a half a point, or whatever, they know who calls that line to move 99% of the time, okay? I'll give you an example. The Arizona State situation that came up years ago. I don't know if you remember that one or not. It was their basketball team, and they were fixing games. And then what happened, there was a bunch of guys that came to Las Vegas, and they bet on one of these games. The line moved 6 or 7 points. I bet on the other side of it because the line I make, and of course I had no idea that they were shaving points, and I lost the bet. Well, they came back to town a little bit later, and they brought 6, 7 guys, and they were going to all the different sports books, and they were betting, and the line moved 6 or 7 points. Lines on games don't move 6 or 7 points. Well, the second time I didn't bet, and sure enough, they won the game by like 20 a game. They came back the third time, but now I'm taping the games, and they did the same thing. I called Steve Ducharme, who was the head of Game and Control for the Game and Control Board. He was the law enforcement part of Game and Control, and told him what was going on. They dispatched some agents. They tried to get these people to talk to them. They left Las Vegas, went back to Arizona, and then later on, I think one of them got kind of caught up in a drug deal. Came out, they were fixing games. And there were a couple of players that were intentionally thrown off, and that's how that scandal came out.
It was exposed by gambling. How did you know it wasn't just luck?
This would be like tracking an elephant in the snow. I mean, you got guys who no one's ever laid eyes on, and they come to Las Vegas, and they bet on a game, and they move it 6 or 7 points. If you're a handicapper, or you know anything at all about betting sports, if the line moves and you're laying a second or third point, you better have a really strong opinion, because they move this line for one reason. It's to make it a lot less appealing to the person betting on that team. So when somebody comes to town and they move a line 6 or 7 points, no bettor in the world is going to do that. And in order to do that, they went to every sports book in town, and they just, they laid 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10. They were new to betting. Okay, they knew they had an edge because of what they were doing, but they didn't know anything about betting. As a result, they created something that was easy for anyone to see. I didn't know exactly who was doing it, and I bet on the other side. Of course, I lost my money, and of course, I came back the second time. I'd seen these things before, and I didn't bet. And then we taped the game. We looked at it. It was pretty easy to see who was doing what they were doing. They came back the third time, did the same thing. I mean, these guys were trying to break in jails, what they were trying to do. Anybody, what they were doing was just stupid. I mean, anyone could see what they were doing. So the only thing that surprised me, it took 3 games for someone to finally turn them in. The sports books turned them in. I mean, I called Ducharme myself because, again, anything that involves the integrity of sports is my business. If people don't trust betting on sports, then the limits are going to go down, and it's going to reduce my ability to be able to bet on sports. But the other one, with a referee, the NFL referee, gamblers knew about that 8 months before he got busted by law enforcement. People quit betting on the games.
Really?
Oh, well, sure.
They just suspected that the calls were...
Anytime, think about the New York Stock Exchange, or think about Apple stock. You could buy $500 million worth of Apple stock, and the price on Apple stock would barely move. On an NBA basketball game, if you were to bet $250,000, it would probably move 1.5, 2 points. People such as myself and others want to know who bet on that game. If there's an injury out or there's something there that makes sense as to why that game moved, then okay, I understand it. But if there's some mysterious person that's betting a lot of money on a game that hasn't been doing this for a period of time, And then I'm looking at the outcome of a game that doesn't make sense. If I tape it and I see something that's out of the ordinary about the way the game's being officiated or some player's performance, this stuff is easy, Joe, to see. Exactly. You're not dealing here with master criminals. You're dealing with people that, frankly, aren't very smart. And they're not very smart to be doing what they're doing. I don't know if you remember the thing years ago with Hot Rod Williams. I mean,
what was that thing?
Well, it was an NBA thing also. But if you go back and you look at the last 5 sports deals, whatever they were, small or big, every one of them were uncovered like that. I did an interview one time on 60 Minutes in 2011, and I was asked which I had the most confidence in, betting on sports or investing in stocks. And my answer was, I have a lot more confidence in betting on sports. It's a much smaller market. As far as things being on the up and up, I have a lot more confidence in that, and I have way more confidence in that than I do the other.
Well, obviously you know it well.
I know how small the market is. I know how transparent the market is. And if someone to fix a game, it's so easy to detect. Today it's even easier. Legalized sports betting is it's so transparent. Young player to them, the repercussions about betting on sports if they're a professional athlete. These guys are kids. They don't know any better. And someone should have explained to them the ramifications of what they were doing. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But we've had a few of them out there now because it's all transparent. They go in and make these bets. If making large bets on something, moving the line substantially, and they do this more than one time or 2 times, and the outcome doesn't make sense, it isn't going to take long to figure this out.